bit like at the end of something. It is not an art promising a renewal. It's like a bit something comparable to what Arnold Böcklin represented in European painting, this mix of academic naturalism and the symbolistic trends. But in Modernismo, there was included also a much more joyous, sunny approach to the open air, which was the Darío de Regoyos thing. Darío de Regoyos was connected to the Brussels avant-garde artist, the Belgian avant-garde artist. He was particularly close to Neo-Impressionism in Belgium, and so the dots of color there reveal that. And he loved the nature in the open air with somewhat naive, in a somewhat naive way. It is not sophisticated in the way Rossignol was, but it is more vital. It is more more optimistic and full of hope, and in fact more closely related to what the European avant-gardes were doing at that precise moment. And Sorolla, again, because Sorolla is also included in this Modernismo as a multi-faced figure. Sorolla has many faces. For instance, when I look at this painting, Boys in the Sea, I can't avoid remembering Triste Herencia, which was the famous painting of the crippled boys in the beach, in the water, with the priest, and with that somber mood and socially concerned mood about nature, which over time transformed itself into this more vitalistic, hedonistic approach to nature, to water and sun and the air, etc., which sometimes has been compared to some of the studies in the open air in Bretagne by Sargent, no? Of the fishermen in Bretagne. Ramon Casas or Mir are part of the Modernismo melting pot, let's say, where many different trends of Impressionism, post-Impressionism, even Mir, for instance, sometimes could be called more of a post-Impressionism artist in the vein of Van Gogh, or even the Art Nouveau European painters. Sometimes it's a bit, it can get to be like a Spanish Klimt or so, not in this case, no? So it happens to peripheral countries. That has happened in the States when it was not yet a central country like it is now in the late 19th century, for instance. It happens to peripheral countries in terms of taste, that the artistic currents, the aesthetic currents, reach them a bit too late, and they get mixed somehow. So the things which in the artistic metropole, which was Paris, obviously, were distinctly separated in the peripheral, the provincial, more provincial countries or regions are mixed. And that happened in Spain, even if Spain was close to Paris, but yet it was miles, many miles away. One of the intents of the Abelló is to put the history of Spanish art in an international context. I think not all collectors need to have a precise aim beyond the momentary pleasure of enjoying the paintings. Not all the collectors need to have a strategy, but Abelló, the couple Abelló, Juan and Ana, because I want to emphasize that Ana Gamazo has played a very important role in the building up of the collection, particularly for the drawings. And you know what, just as a parenthesis, at the opening of the exhibition in Cibeles, when this exhibition or part of this show was shown in Madrid, Abelló was there with Ana Gamazo, with his wife, and he made a speech, not very long, 10 minutes, explaining the origins of his collection and why he had wanted to have it exhibited there, etc. And during his whole speech, he missed to mention the name of Ana Gamazo one single time. And I thought, this guy is gonna die when he gets back home. He's going to die. And immediately after the mayor of Madrid speaking, he stood up and said, I forgot, I don't know how I forgot to mention. But the role, anyway, the role of Ana has been, I know it, very, 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 very important. I have somehow lost the track of where was I going. Yes, they have a strategy. And Juan has stated it, has said it in interviews, recent interviews. His aim, or their aim, was to, first of all, collect Spanish art, and then to collect the necessary foreign art to put the Spanish art in a context, to evaluate, to assess the Spanish art in the right way, to etc. So it's a serious strategy. We can use it to compare some of the modernist, contemporary of each other, more or less contemporary, like Lautrec and Casas. One important part of this exhibition is about women, domestic spaces, and intimacy. Fortunately enough, without having seen the installation previously, I had the good surprise that many of the things which I have put together here are together there. I didn't know, but fortunately enough. So these two are together because they are the best couple in the world. As I see, the Woman in a Cafe by Lautrec is in the out of this secured, protective realm of domestic intimacy. Only a prostitute in those years could be there reading a newspaper in a cafe, no? She's exposed, she's in the open, and the antithesis of that is the carefully protected way in which Casas shows us this lady without even showing us the face, no? Putting her like behind several screens, protective frames. I don't know how to express it, but the painting is clear enough in this ambiguity, in this um, way of keeping things like latent. One guy who was about intimacy in the greatest part of his work was Degas. Many people ignore that Degas liked to make nude studies before he painted ballerinas, and he probably painted many more nude studies than ballerinas for many years. And increasingly, as he tended to abandon oil painting in favor of pastel, in favor of lighter but more complex medium like pastel and combined with charcoal. But in his approach to the nude or the half nude, he rejected the academic conception of the nude, the academic conventions relating to the nude. I mean, the academic nudes were like pin-ups. They were ladies showcase, offered to the public, ladies in the best shape imaginable, being shown to the public. Ladies with bodies unblemished, with perfect bodies, absolutely perfect bodies, showing themselves in the best possible situation or aspect. Or when Degas was showing his pastels, he was accused of searching deliberately for ugliness, for animality, bestiality, hating women, and it is extremely difficult to really understand today this the literality of these objections, because these bodies don't look like ugly or awful like they used to be described by the critics in those years. But the approach to intimacy was disturbing, not because Degas showed the nude, but because it was like the nude of a scene, not being prepared, not being ready to be showcased, not being ready to... The nude was surprised, absorbed in her daily activity, in their common activities, chores, like, for instance, washing and drying herself, which is the title of most of these pastels, is woman washing or drying herself. I love that the Abellós have purchased these two pieces, because it shows better than anything else how Degas could be a formidable draughtsman, but he could be a formidable painter. And the paper medium can be used to get a draughtsman effect, a purely drawn thing, or a very pictorial effect. This is the charcoal preparatory drawing, is a pure depiction of the body. The body literally naked, in the sense that there is just the form, the anatomical form of the body, the gesture of the movement, while the pastel after the bath, the corresponding pastel, is a complex interviewing, how you say, weaving of all these clothes, all these textiles hanging, enveloping the nude, the painting dresses, the painting envelopes in color, in texture, what we had here completely naked and isolated in the pure sculptural form, because the drawing is like a sculpture, while that the pastel is malerish, is pictorial, is painting. Well, getting back to the question of the issue of intimacy, one thing which the critics observed was that Degas liked to watch from behind. Buttocks, backs, faces hidden, no eye contact. Was it about protecting the identity of these ladies? Were they prostitutes? Or it was about anonymity? How objectifying is this approach? Is the painter manipulating, exposing illicitly these models? Is the painter frankly or latently voyeuristic? All these are still hotly debated questions, particularly in the field of gender studies. No? They having produced pages and pages and pages of discussions about if, for instance, these ladies were or not prostitutes. And really, I'm always a bit perplexed about that, because you don't need a description of the profession of these ladies. The painter is non-committal about that. He doesn't say anything about what these ladies, if they can be respectable bourgeois, observed only by their husband or their husbands, or they could be prostitutes. But the painting is not really about giving us so many clues, so many conclusive. In Spanish modernismo, there are many different approaches to ladies' life, and I think in the exhibition these two are close to each other also, because they are two Catalan modernistas, but so different, so distant from each other, even being both sharing the same kind of enveloping drawing, the fluent form, sense of form, which has to do with post-impressionism and with Art Nouveau too. They are, well, Anglada was a fashionable, decorative painter of either socialites or high status ladies or stars. He always painted wonderful femme fatales, you know, with a lot of makeup under this a bit unhealthy greenish light, which is the artificial light of gas or electricity. While, well, Nonel is about unhealthiness too, and decadence, but it's a very different sort of it. He painted always gypsy women, always looking downward, always like depressed, always like without hope, hopeless. They look like beggars, they look like, and he made like a fetish of this kind of deep sadness and desperation. Two very different sides of the fin de siècle in Spain. In the exhibition, we had this wonderful portrait of Misia by Bonnard. Misia was a legend, you know, was this Polish girl called Misia Godewska, who married successively three influent men: Tadeu Natanson, who was a critic and an entrepreneur in the literary milieu of avant-garde in the fin de siècle Paris. And then she, let's say, sold herself to one of the most important media tycoons in those years, Alfred Edwards. And she married Edwards in 1905. And finally, she married a Spanish artist, José María Sert, who was very, very famous and very affluent in the interwar years. And, well, she was in the mid of Parisian society, a close friend of Coco Chanel, of Ravel, of Diaghilev, and so many others. And her salon, for many years, was the place where everything happened in Paris, in the artistic and literary Paris. It happens that we've got at the Thyssen a portrait painted by Bonnard of Misia in the same year, but they are very different in a way. The one at the Thyssen is more traditional, is of more traditional breed, emphasized by the decoration on the wall, which is a decoration Bonnard himself did, which evokes the 18th century. It's like a bit revivalist portrait, trying to infuse an atmosphere of Rococo beauty around Misia, to reinvent Misia as a sort of 18th century social beauty in France. While this is straight, flatter, and more definitely modern than the other one. In both, the doll-like character of Misia, the doll face, is stressed, but even more so in this case. And the close-up enhances that aspect. In his late years, Bonnard did a lot of studies from the nude studies, inspired, using as a model, as a constant model, his life companion, Marthe. He used to observe her when he was around in the kitchen or in the bathroom. She spent long hours in the bathroom bathing, and he painted her or draw her nude around the house. Bonnard is accused of being, particularly this late Bonnard, is accused of being almost formless, insufficiently concerned about the form of things, and messy in the treatment of color, mixing too many colors and too many to belie that, to stress the sense of form in Bonnard. It could be enough to show his affinities to member of his own generation, which is Mayol, the sculptor, with whom he has a deep connection. We've got the three nymphs here, a later version, but there is a an earlier version of one of these three nymphs in the Marly-Leroy studio of Mayol, wonderfully photographed by Braque in the 30s. And there is, in the attitude of the nude by Bonnard, with the perfume little bottle, and this almost religious gesture of the Mayol figure, there is some kind of bridge, some kind of connection. Kees van Dongen is nowadays half forgotten painter who used to be a celebrity and would deserve a better fate. He was a very remarkable painter, a very daring painter in the context of Fauvism, of French Fauvism, even bolder than some of his companions. He was, for instance, acquainted with Pechstein, the German expressionist painter. In 1907, they met in Paris, and the following year, Kees van Dongen was invited to show with De Bruyke, with the German expressionist group. Then van Dongen became very fond of elegant subject matter, and he became too fashionable, and because of that he has run out of fashion. This is her daughter, Augusta Gussie, or Dolly, when she was 4 years old, and they live at the Bateau Lavoir, at that eccentric studio or set of studios in Montmartre, where they were neighbors of Picasso, of the young Picasso, and Picasso and Fernand played with the young Dolly, or give Dolly some candy or anything. They were neighbors there in those years. As Modigliani belongs to the Bohemian legend of the Paris of early, although more than in Montmartre, in Montparnasse. The cellist is a very important painting by Modigliani, which is in the Abelló collection and in this exhibition. And they have managed, the Abelló have managed to collect several pieces related to Modigliani and this cellist. First of all, the drawing, the preparatory drawing, and then the verso, the other side of the painting by Modigliani, is a portrait of Brancusi, and they have purchased this portrait drawing of Brancusi by Modigliani also. So we've got four-corner set plus a couple of drawings by Modigliani included in the Abelló collection. The cellist comes from straight from the Boy in a Red Waistcoat by Cézanne. In those years, Modigliani was dazzled, fascinated by Cézanne. After attending the retrospective of Cézanne, posthumous retrospective of 1907, he bought a postcard of this painting, and he carried on wherever he went. And whenever someone mentioned the name of Cézanne, he took out the postcard and kissed the postcard. So he was very showy about his passion for Cézanne, and that was the starting point. You can see, together probably with El Greco, no? It is close to El Greco too, but Cézanne himself had learned a lot from El Greco, as you perfectly know. So this cellist is a kind of romanticized Cézanne. It's a peculiar emotional version. Brancusi taught a lot to Modigliani about sculpture. Modigliani wanted to be a sculptor too, and Brancusi taught him, first of all, about archaic art, about African art, about Cycladic art, this art of this Aegean Isle, and he taught Modigliani that sculpture must be not model, but cut, carved in the stone, la taille directe. That was the key word in those years. And we've got in the exhibition this wonderful head by Modigliani, carved in stone directly. One important set of paintings, I'm running to the end of my walk. One important set of paintings in this show is about Cubism. And the reason is clear in the context of this collector's strategy of promoting and putting into a context Spanish art. There are several important Spanish artists connected to Cubism. First of all, Picasso, then Juan Gris, notoriously, and then there is a third one which is not so well known, which is Maria Blanchard, because she didn't exhibited so much out of Spain, and she has been somehow forgotten out of Spain. But these three Cubists, Spanish Cubists, demand for some equilibrium, purchasing paintings, foreign painters, French or painters from abroad, to keep the balance between. That is how Juan Abelló himself explains the building up of this Cubist collection, which is about the Cubism after the World War I, the Great War, which is the phase of when Cubism became an almost classical discipline. Cubism was already codified, was already like close. It had definite rules, etc. It was Léonce Rosenberg at the Galerie de l'Effort Moderne who took under his care Braque, Juan Gris, Léger, and many others to give Cubism a second career, a second life after the war. One thing characteristic of this after the war Cubism, post-war Cubism, is that it doesn't give you the feeling that it is improvised. It is like carefully planned. It is tightly closed. No, it is. Juan Gris used to say that his painting was not anymore made by induction. I mean, starting with experience and then going into higher and higher generalities, but the other way around. His painting, he said, was deductive. From abstraction to, he started not with a bottle to create a cylinder, but the other way around. He started with the geometrical bodies and then went down to reality. This is probably the most dazzling work by a Cubist in the whole exhibition. This classical still life by Juan Gris from his best period, the 1919, the best masterpieces at the Metropolitan Art de MoMA and the best collections in the world by Juan Gris come from this period. And Léger. Léger is, offers a peculiar interpretation of Cubism, much connected to the ideology of the mechanistic ideology of futurism. So he concocted a kind of Cubo-futurism, like the Russian avant-garde artists, in which the syntax of the painting is Cubist, but the background, the thinking behind the syntax, the semantic aspects are come from the futurist ideology, you know, velocity, acceleration, the cult of the machine, all those things. And the paintings by Léger, in these days, I have brought one from the Thyssen, which is close to the one in the Abelló collection. They are about three things: mechanism, about the gears of modern technology. Second, they are about urban life, which Léger was literally obsessed about urban life, the street, the transportation in the city. And thirdly, the signs. Many of these circles, which could come from Delaunay, refer to traffic lights, for instance, or signals in the street. Sometimes there are letters or numbers which refer to signs in the streets. Léger loved, for instance, all the displays of advertising in the streets, etc., and thought that urban life, the urban colors and urban movement could become a sort of Gesamtkunstwerk, total art in itself. So, in a way, the Cubism after the First World War was a sort of rappel à l'ordre, of back to order, because it was not, as I've said, not an improvised sort of Cubism, but a very closely knitted, tightly knitted deductive approach to painting, deductive a priori, intellectually very rigid, very stiff. But there were other ways, other approaches to rappel à l'ordre. Mainly the two greatest figures in this era, in this age, Matisse and Picasso. Picasso in his later years. This is the favorite painting of Abelló, of Juan Abelló, as he confesses to, in his collection, as he confesses in one recent interview. It is again about intimacy, about women and intimacy, about intimate spaces, and look on how subtly, delicately he managed to, well, there is one space and then there is another inside the first one. So it's like the matryoshkas, the Russian dolls, one inside another and another inside the other. And everything enveloped in textiles. Matisse was a passionate collector of textiles. He used lots of these tapestries, covers, curtains, dresses to dress the stage and to prepare the models, to create these fantasies, these spaces which even when they don't want to cheat us, they don't want to look spaces for odalisque, or they are oriental. They smell of Islam, for instance. There is a very, very strong cultural fascination with Islam in Matisse. This pattern, decorative impulse through his work. With Picasso, it is entirely a different world. If, let's say, if Matisse, the visual order Matisse pursues, it's about color, while Picasso is about, in these years, about black and white. Matisse uses and is obsessed, literally obsessed with textiles, while Picasso is fascinated with sculpture. The cultural influence, the cultural background of Matisse could be called Islamic, while Picasso is neatly Greco-Roman. And as a result, we could call the rappel à l'ordre by Matisse of a decorative sort, while Picasso is a classicist in his ways. Let's go quickly through the assessing the references, this wonderful drawing, painting. It is midway between drawing and painting, which is featured in your galleries as a real jewel. It is put on a wall as a unique painting, and it deserves that singling out. Let's see which references we get from there. First of all, it is a painting done in the very days of Woman in White, which is the most famous production of Picasso in those years, on those classicist years, at the Met, no? It evokes, it reminds us vaguely of examples, classicist examples like the Valpinson Bather by Ingres. It is like the Valpinson Bather turned around. No? It's like a frontal view. It could be like a frontal view of the Valpinson Bather. But in fact, it has a very complex story about it. The topic of this seated nude by Picasso is the toilet of Venus. Venus in front of a mirror, looking at her own, looks at in the mirror. Picasso developed that, the idea of a classicist composition on the toilet of Venus at the end of 1922. And the composition got more and more complex and ended being something like that drawing up there, with Venus in front of the mirror, Mars, the god Mars, famously linked to Venus as her lover, holding the mirror to her, and Cupid up there, presiding over there, and plus a pipe player close to them. He worked on this composition for some weeks and finally dropped it and decided that it was not going to be. Well, it was, you can see that inverting the Mars and Venus figures, it is related to this Pompeian painting, wall painting. It's closely related to that, except for the pipe player. Well, the pipe player was the only survivor of the shrinking of the shipwreck of this painting. I mean, when Picasso decided to abandon the project, he kept the pipe player and converted it into the most famous icon of probably of his classicist period, which is the pipes of Pan, where the pipe player is related to this Pan and Daphne marble by Heliodorus, well, a copy, Roman copy inspired in that. So you can notice how complex can be the traditional background behind one single painting. The craft of the classicist is to make believe that things are simple. The classicist is about persuading you that his work is simple. It is not, but the complexity must be in hiding, must be behind the... Dalí, of course, took a lot from Picasso classicism. This is a remarkable drawing in the Abelló collection, obviously related to the Juan Gris period in Picasso. Dalí evolved into something completely different, as you know. This is the Dalí we always remember. A gift, in this case, was a painting, the painting A Gift for Edna Bullman Chase, editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine. It is a ruined wall being a mask of the landscape, masking the landscape in the shape of a skull. So an unlikely gift for the director or editor-in-chief of Vogue. But for Dalí, death was sexy, was fashionable, and in these years with the war, he exploited this kind, he exploited without scruples of any kind as he used to be. He exploited death and war as fashionable topics. You see the... And our last painting by Picasso, the later bust, in 1971, I'm ending my lecture. Picasso was 90, and in October of that year, this guy got the most unprecedented privilege. He opened his retrospective exhibition at the Museo du Louvre, the first one ever devoted to a living artist. The man with a hat is a frequent character in his last works, and I sometimes wonder if, if it is the artist himself in disguise, as he enjoy. In this case, I have brought for you an authentic Texan Picasso, because it's Picasso with the hat and gun enjoying and the revolver that Gary Cooper had given him. So it's it is with a work linked to Picasso that we end the lecture. Francis Bacon was a troubled British artist, which is in his early years discovered Picasso, the most troubling surrealist compositions by Picasso in the 30s, particularly his crucifixions, and created those things from Picasso. This Picassian Bacon is our doorway to the last painting. Wow, this orange has come out in a different way, which I expected something else. It is almost red on my screen and almost yellowish there, or yellowish there. I'm sorry. Anyway, you've got the painting there, and it's the most gorgeous, one of the most gorgeous things in the show, and it's the last modern monster today, or master today, we are going to tackle. Francis Bacon. I've said that the triptych was related, the format triptych was related to the altarpiece, for instance, in early Netherlandish painting with the great Flemish Renaissance artist. Triptychs were done to be installed in churches, to decorate altars, and to be a backdrop behind the celebration of the Mass. The Mass, which is a sacrificial ritual. In a way, the triptychs by Bacon try to preserve that sacrificial stage idea, although sometimes it can be closer to a corrida de toros, to a bullfighting arena, than to a proper altarpiece space. This one, this triptych, one of the last statements Bacon did in this iconic format, could be inspired by John Edward, could be the portrait, the multiple portrait of John Edward, the painter's companion since 1976. He was 40 years younger than Bacon and his only heir. And he died some years ago in 2003. There is many ways to approach a painting like that, seeking for tradition, because behind every modern artwork, be it as shocking or as new as it seems it could be, there is always a strong presence of tradition, even if latent. Many people, when they look at Bacon, they look the sordid, the violent, the cruel side of it, this conception of sex and death intimately linked to each other, which was real in the personal life of Bacon, who was a very deeply troubled person, and involved with guys like Georges Dyer, who was a burglar. They met when he how do you say, broke into his home, and they met in this way, a strange way of, and he was a drug addict, he was a junkie, and finally suicidal, and a very troubled guy. And some of the pictures Bacon or his friends took of Georges Dyer in this awfully messy studio could be the image behind these guys there. But there could be something else behind that, beyond the image of Georges Dyer. There could be the inudi of the Sistine Chapel. They look like that. At the sides of the triptych, like escorting that central image, which is the most troubling thing there, because it looks like somebody wrestling with somebody else, probably with his own shadow, something like that, at the entrance of a doorway or something. And these two guys on the sides could be like sentinels, like guards of the door, guardians of the door, a bit like the inudi, not decorate but escort and keep these wonderful doors to the scenes of the biblical narrative in the Sixtine Chapel by Michelangelo. Thank you all.